Hi, I'm Cathy Rudd, and I live in Lake Oswego, Oregon, and we just got done making the pretzels dipped in white bark chocolate. They turned out beautiful, if I say so myself, and then we added some green sprinkles because this is December and it's Christmas, so I thought that would give it a little festive touch. So now I'm going to show you how to make peanut clusters. So what you do is, again, you buy the almond bark, but you buy it in chocolate this time. And I take 3/4 of the package, and I'm going to put them in this saucepan. And then I'm going to put it on boiling water so that this will melt slowly and evenly. Then I'm going to add about 6 ounces of the chocolate chips, the Nestle's House chocolate chips, which I'm a real fan of. And pour those on top. And then I'm going to put in 2 to 3 teaspoons of Crisco. And the reason I put that in, here's the Crisco can. The reason I put the Crisco in is because it gives the chocolate a nice sheen to it. So that when you're eating that peanut cluster, which is just gonna be heaven on earth, it'll be a little shiny, it won't be dull and flat looking. So you get in there right now. Okay. So I've got those ingredients in here right now. I've got the bark, the chocolate bark, and I've got the chocolate chips, and I've got the Crisco. So now I'm going over to my double boiler, which has boiling water in it, and I'm just going to put that over the boiling water and just let it begin to melt the chocolates together and the Crisco.
If you don't have a double boiler, is there something else you can do?
You could actually take a glass dish and you could put all of this in your microwave. But again, I would really watch it. I would do it maybe in 30 to 40 second increments because you don't want anything to burn. Number one, it doesn't smell well. You can't use it. And number two, it's a nasty mess to have to clean up. So, you know what? If you don't have this little saucepan that I have that goes with the double boiler, you can put a glass dish on top of that and it'll work out just fine. But you do want it to melt over boiling water. That's important because the boiling process just makes it evenly done.
Do you know why the recipe calls for 2 different kinds of chocolate? The squares and then the chocolate chips?
I do. The bark is not that tasty. The bark doesn't really have a lot of flavor to it, and it's it could be just maybe a little bitter. It's pretty subtle. But then when you add the chocolate chips, of course, they have sugar. So they are going to put that taste in that we're all looking for, that delicious chocolatey taste. So as you can see now, it's starting to melt. And the bark is going to give it a really pretty brown color along with the chocolate chips.
So it gives it color as well as texture.
Mm-hmm. Color, texture, and of course the sweetness, which we're all wanting to have. And again, now you're going to have that, that delicious, sweet, sugary chocolate flavor with the nuts I'm going to add. I'm going to add the nuts when I'm done melting all of this because it's not necessary to cook the nuts. But what I'll do is I'll add about 4 cups of Spanish peanuts, and again, it's kind of just looking at it to see, do I have more nuts than I have chocolate, or do I have more chocolate than I have nuts? So you can adjust your quantity as you're making your peanut clusters.
And then when you use that kind of pan, the double boiler, do you ever have the water spill over, and is that a problem? What do you do about that?
Well, what I do, first of all, I'm going to check it right now. It's boiling pretty vigorously, so what I might do is turn it down just a little tiny bit. I had it on boil to begin with just to get it started, and now I'm probably halfway in between on my gauge. But again, this is a gas stove, so it's easy to turn the heat down or turn the heat up depending on what I need for each recipe. On the electric stove, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to cool down to where you want it, because you know the coils have to slowly turn down, versus gas, it's just instantly going to go down when you adjust the temperature.
And you're using what you call your favorite spoon, when a lot of like die-hard people would use a wooden spoon, and you don't think there's a big difference, do you?
No, I love this little silver spoon. It's very old. I have no idea where I got it, who it came from, but it just works really well with my candy making because it's sharp, and I can, if I need to, you know, break them up a little bit, I can do that. A wooden spoon's really nice too. If that's all you have, a wooden spoon would be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have the wooden spoons, then this is my go-to spoon that I would want to go to.
So when a recipe calls for a wooden spoon, I'm not a real big cook, so I'm afraid to do things if I don't have the right utensil. So you can mix up utensils if you need to.
I think so, because think about it, years ago or decades ago, there weren't wooden spoons. I mean, it's probably been quite a while, but originally there weren't wooden spoons, there were just metal spoons, because that's probably what most of our mothers had. And that's what they used, and they were able to get by just fine. So now, as you can see by looking at this, it's just about melted. Got one little stubborn hunk right here that's holding out on me, and it's a beautiful color. It's nice and it's a beautiful brown color, and it's shiny. That's what we wanted. That's why we put the Crisco in, and it's just about ready for me to add the nuts, and then we can start putting them on the wax paper. So I'm getting my pot holder out to put this pan on. Even though this pan hasn't been directly on a burner, it has gotten pretty warm from the steam coming up from the boiling water. So I'm just going to protect my counters by putting the pot holder down. One thing I would do, I would have a spatula close by, because you want to get every last bit of this yummy chocolate out of this pan. So I'm going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to walk over to my pot holder and put it right here, and then I'm going to start to add the peanuts and stir. And what we want to do is we want to add enough peanuts so that it is like a cluster. That's our goal. Our goal is to have peanuts and a little bit of chocolate around it.
So do you do this by eye, or how many peanuts do you think you
I
just
usually
poured
do
in?
it by eye. It says 1.5 pounds, which I know I don't have 1.5 pounds in that 4-cup measuring cup, but I think I'm going to be pretty close. I kind of eyeballed it today when I got the nuts, and just purchased as many as I was going to need, because sometimes then you have that problem where you've got the nuts left over, but no bark, or you've got the bark left over and no nuts.
And are these salted nuts or are these plain?
These are salted, because again, somebody wants to have that bite of chocolate, which is heavenly, and the salt along with it and the crunch. So there you go. So now what I'll do, I'm going to put little spoonfuls of this onto the wax paper, and then we'll just let it set up.
And you put it on the wax paper, and then that's it?
That's it.
You don't have to cook, you don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything. You just have to wait for them to cool enough so you can eat them.
So like the pretzels that you dipped in the other video, you're just putting it on wax paper, nothing fancy.
Nothing
and
fancy.
Is that about a tablespoon that you are
I'm using a teaspoon, so it's a little bit more than a teaspoon. Again, I'm just trying to eyeball. If I was picking up one of these to eat, what would be convenient to hold in my hand? So that's more or less how I do it. I go by scale.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a big, gigantic one that I'm holding on to. But I want about a bite size or a little bit more. And so that is your peanut cluster.
And how many of those will you put down with that recipe? How many little pieces of peanut cluster will that
I'm
make?
going to get 30 or 40. I would imagine. And then they take a little while to set up, but they are delicious. And then they make really nice gifts for your friends. And so this is Cathy Rudd. Thank you for joining me.